No gavel?
You don't have your gavel?
No, it's all right. I can knock on the table or something. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 17th, 2024 Design Review Board meeting. First up is roll call.
Good evening. We have two board members that are absent today, which is Board Member Kim and Board Member Docio. Board Member Malat. Board Member Rosner.
Here.
And Chair Chung.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Now is oral communications for anybody that wishes to address the Design Review Board for items that are not on this evening's agenda. So if you have anything that is not on this evening's agenda and would like to address, you can come forward and speak up to 3 minutes. We'll go to the Zoom call. If you're on the Zoom call, if you could use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen to indicate that you'd like to speak on any items not on this evening's agenda.
We have no hands raised.
All right, thank you. And staff briefing.
So I just wanted to bring to the attention the Design Review Board members that November 7th will be our next meeting. It's a very heavy agenda. We have, and right now we have 5. One may move to the next meeting, but it's going to be a very busy calendar. So if you are not available for that, please let us know now so we can make sure that we have a quorum. That's all I have for tonight.
Right. Thank you. And now we go to the adoption of the minutes from the September 19th Design Review Board meeting. Is there any comments or a motion to adopt those minutes?
No comments. Motion to adopt the minutes from
September 19th.
what was it?
September 19th.
September 19th meeting.
And do we have a second? And all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. And the minutes get adopted. Moving right along to the first of 3 public hearings this evening. The first one is PH1 1960 Straitsview Drive. I'm sorry, I should mention there are 2 items on this evening's agenda. 1960 Straitsview Drive has been continued to the November 7th Design Review Board meeting, which brings us to PH2 16 Place Moulin application. And so the way we do these is the applicant has up to 20 minutes to present, and at which point we might ask some questions, but the public will be provided an opportunity. You'll have 3 minutes as the public to address any concerns that you might have. And then after the public goes, the applicant will be given 5 additional minutes to address any of those concerns. So with that, is the applicant prepared to present?
We go on, come up or?
Yeah, yeah. So basically we record everything. So if you could.
On and up is the down button. I'll move you forward and the other one will move you back. I know it's
Okay.
not intuitive.
Okay.
And there also is a light here for a pointer.
Okay. So-
Okay.
No, can we get some,
You want a little more light?
we need some light. A little bit. Okay.
So thank you, Design Review Board for coming. Yeah, sure. Okay.
I need it recorded.
Okay. Thank you, first of all, Design Review Board for coming out and visiting both sides of the property and kind of seeing what's going on. So the issue is the proposition is the 16 Place Moulin deck. As you can see here, I tried to kind of ballpark where the deck is proposed in the blue. The middle house is ours. And what I wanted to point out here is that the viewpoints of either house on both sides are in a totally different direction than where our viewpoint is and where our deck will be. 14 Place Moulin hasn't raised any concerns, so I'll kind of let that go. For 18 Place Moulin, what you can see is that the house is situated facing a totally different direction. And the views of Richardson Bay is where I'm pointing to. So, you know, with our house being set back further with trees in between, I really don't see that much of an issue, but we'll go through this. At 18 Place Moulin, you've got five decks, that I can count probably six. If you kind of look there too, 6 decks. And, you know, quite large decks and plenty of options to sit. Of which, you know, one of these decks has a basketball court. And this is where the views are. I mean, the house, this deck is this deck over here, off to the other side of the house. So our house is up here. You can see that, you know, kind of the main areas of the house are far away from our backyard. And so, oh, sorry, wrong direction. So what we want is to have, you know, the same thing. We want to have a flat area for our kids to play. We won't have as nice of a view, but, you know, we still like to have the same privilege. It's not uncommon on the Place Milan block to have this kind of backyard. You can see here they've got a pool, a backyard area at 20 Place Milan, at 19 Place Milan. It's hard to see here, but there's a huge turfed backyard area that's flat that they can use for their kids to run around as well. We had reached out on a few occasions to our neighbor at 18 to try to figure out what the issues were, but we never heard back. So we worked with Samantha and Dina as they came out to the site, and they proposed, hey, why don't you move back the deck from 30 feet to a little bit further back so that it's out of the line of sight, if at all. So we did that. We went from 30 feet to 25 feet. Mind you, the proposed deck is about, I'm ballparking here, 35, 40 feet from the privacy wall, which is kind of here. So it's quite a way set back from that deck, not the stairs, but the deck itself. But as a result of moving it back 5 feet, you really can't see anything. It's hard to see here with the lights on. Maybe if you turn that, are you able to turn that light off? So you can't really see it, but there's like a story pole right there on the original proposal. And as a result of the new one, you can't see anything here. There's nothing. And we kind of preemptively took this upon ourselves, even though we never got feedback from the neighbor, never heard from them. We just, you know, wanted to be a good neighbor and not be at all visible. So if you look here, you can see that,
Whoop.
sorry. Okay, so if you look here, you know, the houses are all quite close to each other. 14 Place Milan is like breathing down our necks. They can see pretty much everything we're doing, which is fine. It's just part of living in this neighborhood. But on the flip side, 18 is, can't even see them pictured here. They're quite a ways away. They're tucked down and facing the other way, as I was mentioning before. Our hillside is sloped such that it's not usable, which is why we need this deck. What we like is to be able to open up doors from the downstairs and go onto the deck for the kids to play. And here's another picture, kind of really driving home the point that these two homes are quite distant from each other. And, you know, he's facing this direction, I'm facing this direction, with huge trees between our homes. The deck that he's concerned about is a back deck that is, you know, the fifth most used deck. I haven't seen furniture there. I don't think it gets used, but anyway. So we've attempted to reach out to 18 Place Milan on a few occasions. In early 2024, we left a card and bottle of wine asking, hey, would you reach out to us? Here's our number. We want to get your input as we design this deck. No response. March 18th, Samantha with the town tried reaching out to the neighbor. No response. April 9th, still no response to Samantha's call, but the attorney inquired about the status, which is interesting, as later on you'll see why he inquired about the status. They did not actually comment or say anything. On June 14th, our architect actually reached out to their attorney to get feedback. Hey, what should we do? We want to know what you think. June 25th, a response came from them. Once we followed up again, hey, we'll get back in touch with you. No feedback was given subsequently. So they were just waiting for us to apply, to finally reach out. So that was really our only option, because we tried every possible way to reach out to them. And, I just feel like they weren't dealing with us in good faith. If you have, something you want to talk about, let's talk about it. But that wasn't the case. October 10th, the attorney, responds 1 week before our design review board meeting, because we finally submitted and they finally saw. And that's when they came to the table and said, hey, we oppose this. And they sent that 61-page document. Yeah, forgetting that that's not neighborly. I mean, that's not right. Anyway, our views, their views aren't really being blocked. You've all gone out there and seen it, the trees between our houses. We pulled the deck back 5 feet so that it's completely out of their line of sight. The house is angled in a different direction. So it's really not as big of a deal as, well, I don't believe it's a huge deal. Anyway, you can see here from further pictures that here's this deck that they're referring to that's down low. They got this upper terrace area from which, if they wanted to, they can stand and look over the privacy wall and look into our backyard. But I mean, there's just a lot of mature trees that have been there for 30 plus years, probably longer than this house has been built. Further pictures of the upper terrace area, the trees blocking. I mean, to a certain extent, can you block everything out? No, they can see the side of my house. I mean, it's just part of where we live. Everything is pretty tight. It's another picture. What I am willing to do is, as another concession, in addition to moving it back 5 feet, which I already did, is I read the thing that they sent, and, they were saying the stairwell is going to be an invasion of privacy. So we can put a privacy screen on the stairwell. Not that people ever hang out on stairwells. I mean, people would just be passing through, but I'm happy to accommodate and put this privacy barrier so no one looks down onto his deck. The reason for our deck is family. I mean, everybody else has done it. We'd like kind of the same opportunity for our kids to be able to run around and grow up and have a backyard. We need a level backyard for the kids, for our dog. And I think what we're asking for is not out of line with what anybody else has done in the area. So that's all I have. And then my attorney, Elizabeth, will be speaking a little bit too.
Good evening, Chair Chong and members of the board. Elizabeth Breckus. I represent Daria and Tanya in connection with their application. Unfortunately, their architect is away this week, and they received the letter and had some concerns and wanted to have it addressed in terms of the response that they've made down to this project. No one blames the neighbor for complaining. Obviously, you hear this all the time, and anytime your view is changing, there's concern, and we understand that. However, it is unfortunate that there wasn't an earlier engagement and discussion about the project, and that is where I would fault the process, just because it's not very fair to the neighbor to all of a sudden at the tail end of a letter have suggestions on a project. And then the other objection I take with the letter that has been submitted is the suggestion that there is an agreement. Obviously, there is nothing in the staff report that points to a condition of approval from way back when the applicant's home was built, and stating that there could be no changes to this home. And in fact, the agreement that is described by the neighbor is extremely one-sided. It's an agreement where they got to expand their decks and make all these modifications to their property. And their position is that this home needs to be tethered to some standard in 1998, and that no modifications can occur, including, expansion of decks like they've done. And notwithstanding that design review standards have changed, general plans that have been updated and adopted. And so I don't believe that that's a very credible argument, and certainly it is not supported by the record. There is no variance. There is no legal reason to deny this application. As you well know, this is within your discretion to decide if this is an appropriate application and if it meets with the aesthetics that you as a board set. So the only thing I would point to is the staff report that describes the other properties in the vicinity and the fact that they enjoy decks of this size. And, if ever I was to see a project that seemed to have very enviable privacy protection in the way of very mature screening, this would seem to be it. And so for that reason, I would suggest that the application can be approved as proposed. I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant?
I have two questions for the applicant. Yeah. Two questions for the applicant. I've heard from both sides, there's two windows. One's on the, that currently don't exist. And one's on the, I think the original elevation and the new elevation that says new windows. Are there being new windows proposed or not?
No,
Okay,
those were taken out.
okay. And there are some trees on your property that will be close to, I think, the proposed stairwell. Are those trees staying or will they have to be removed?
The plan is to keep the trees.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions, Jen? All right, thanks. All right, with that, we'll open it up to the public. If you're here to speak on this application, please come forward. We do ask that you state your name and address for the record and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Evening, Chair Chung and the rest of the members of the board. My name is Mike Lamphere. I represent Clifford Alm and his sons in opposition to this application for the new deck. Mr. Alm and his sons attended this evening because this is an issue that's very important to them. I understand the applicant's desire to want to expand their back living areas. That's reasonable. But really, if you look at the size and scope of this new deck, it's massive. It's 1,600 plus square feet, standing at times over 25 feet tall. It's actually a second deck for the property. They already have a deck that was in the original build. And I think that's where maybe there's some a misunderstanding of our opposition, is that there was a lot of focus on views. Really, my client isn't so concerned with views. There is a view to the east. There is views that are currently being blocked by trees on the other property, but it's privacy. Privacy is the issue. One thing that really strikes you, and some of the board members have been out, there's a massive privacy wall in place between these two properties. That wall was built specifically after the next door neighbor built their home. This was back in the late 90s. It's at times, over 15 feet tall, concrete foundation, solid. This is not to demarc a boundary line. This isn't for safety. This is for privacy, and that's why it was put in place. And the cost for that wall was paid by the neighbor. It was not paid by Mr. Alm. It's paid by the neighbor because it was recognized when Mr. Sadre designed that original home next door that there were extreme privacy issues between the two properties. So this wall was put in place, windows were removed from the western side of the home, partition blocks, if you will, were put around the edges of exiting doors. And then at the end of their upper main level deck, there was a partition wall also placed there too, which now I think they have a grill area in front of it. In this new design, that's all going to be removed. And I think most egregiously, the stairwell comes right down to the privacy wall where one could reach out, put your hands on it, look over. And they're looking into the living room, the front door, the backyard areas of my client. There's no way I can do all this in 3 minutes, but privacy is the issue. If the new deck is placed below and in back of the privacy wall with access to the other side of the property, I think everyone would be very happy. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Is there any additional comments on this application? All right. With that, we'll go to the Zoom call to see if there's any body on the Zoom call that has any comments. If you could use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen, and we'll let you into the room.
There are no hands raised.
All right. With that, the applicant does have 5 additional minutes to address any of the concerns that were raised.
I'm sorry, we do actually have one hand raised
right.
on Zoom. One moment.
And if you could state your name and address, please.
My name's Bill Kim. I'm the owner of 14 Policeman Lot. We didn't know anything about this renovation until a couple of days ago. We have absolutely no objection to the way it's being proposed. But if the stairway is going to be on our side, we may have to reconsider.
Okay. Are you still there? Did you get a cutoff, or was that the end of your comments?
That's the end of my comment.
All right, perfect.
And I wrote an email talking about all the construction vehicles and the fact that we can't get out of the driveway because of all the construction vehicles, but that may be a different issue.
Yeah, no, thank you. We did get the letter from the staff regarding the construction issues. Unfortunately, as the design review board, we're just here to address the design issues and not necessarily but you could, if you did have concerns, that would be something you could address with the building department.
Right. I'm not sure if it's a normal procedure, but for some reason, we didn't get any notice whatsoever about this until a couple of days ago. Basically, letting us know of this public hearing, but we didn't know anything about the deck being built or being proposed. But again, we want to be good neighbors and we have no problems with it. But if the stairway is going to be on our side, we may not have an objection, but we may have to reconsider.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Anybody else on the Zoom call have any comments?
There is no other hands raised.
All right. Thank you. With that, the applicant has the opportunity to for up to 5 minutes if you'd like to address any of the concerns that were raised.
Yep, just a couple of points based on what Mr. Lamphere said. Privacy, I certainly understand, and that is important to me too. Practicality is also important to me. And so one of the things that was not mentioned that I want to reiterate again is that this deck is 40 feet away from the privacy wall. This is quite a ways away. We are not, kind of looming over them. We're talking about, you can put your hands on the privacy wall and look over. Well, they can put their hands over the privacy wall and look over as it stands because there's stairwells right there. We have stairwells too. I mean, if we wanted to, we could look into each other's backyards all day. But I don't think that is really what's going to happen practically. And in the one area, as I mentioned before, that, is closest with that stairwell, we will put a privacy screen. It's not practical to put the stairs on the other side. And thank you, Mr. Kim. I don't know if you're still listening for your, kind of approval of our project. It's not practical on that side. Actually, 14 Place Milan there's no real screening between us. There's no mature trees. There's nothing. I mean, the stairs are going to be a lot more visible on that side. And it's just going to be a lot more of an eyesore. Whereas here, it's actually hidden. This is the back of 18 Place Milan's house we're talking about, not the front, not anything that is used. This is really the back. And I think overall, this proposal is probably the most reasonable of all places to put it. So thank you for that.
Excellent, thank you. All right, with that, we will, any final questions for the applicant before we close the public? All right, with that, we'll close the public portion of the hearing. I do just have a couple quick questions for staff that confirmation that notices were, the application was properly noticed.
That's correct.
Okay, and then I think the other question was, what, if anything, should we be considering regarding the privacy laws that relates to this application? As far as like, there was some mention from one of the letters or whatever, the agreement or anything like that, just to confirm that we didn't see anything in the staff report. Was there anything that should be considered regarding the privacy law as far as a previous application or agreement?
Correct.
Okay. All right. With that, would anybody like to lead us off? Fire away.
First of all,
Mike.
first of all, I'd like to formally state for the record that about 30 years ago, I consulted on 18 Place Milan, the applicant's neighboring property as an architect. My recollection is I didn't do much work at all, but was there briefly, and I've since been acquainted with the Alms off and on. The last time I saw Mr. Alm was over 15 years ago. Given my work on the neighboring property was about 30 years ago to my recollection, I do not have a conflict of interest in this that affects my ability to participate in the decision-making process regarding 16 Place Milan. I'm prepared to make an impartial decision based solely on the information presented at this evening. And with that, I'd like to just go over a few things that I am concerned about. First of all, this is an enormous deck. It's the biggest one I can recall in Tiburon coming before this board. There may have been larger ones. It's also 25 feet in the air, 20 feet in the air, depending on where you measure it. And it's made of wood with a steel post frame, which leads to a lot of sound issues. People running across a deck, the noise is amplified by the deck and becomes like a big drum in the neighborhood. And it affects everybody in the neighborhood, not just you. The issue of privacy is important. I went over to Mr. Alm's house for the first time in a long time yesterday. And the proposed deck, the deck itself would have the ability to look right straight through their living room, dining room, kitchen, and family room to the view on the other side of their house, because the deck is so placed that it just sticks out that far. And it also coincidentally blocks their view of the Richmond San Rafael area, or San Rafael Bridge. But honestly, I don't consider the view blockage as big an issue as the sound issue. Not only is it a sound problem, but a wooden deck has a lifetime that's very short, typically 20 years, very seldom that long. And I think a deck of this size, if it's being built in a neighborhood where sound will travel and sound is, aside from the carpenters, is constrained, I think you should consider on a deck like this, building it out of a steel and concrete material that would dampen the sound. You don't get the sound reverberation with a concrete deck that you get with a wood deck. the stair is particularly a problem for privacy, and I think you should redesign it in such a way that it doesn't affect either of your neighbors, perhaps in the center of the room coming out of the living room above and going over the deck, the area below. I think you ought to consider breaking the deck up in smaller pieces and making smaller decks. My own familiarity with decks is quite considerable. I've done about something in the order of 500 projects in Tiburon alone. And many of them have included decks, including my own house, where I put cementitious material on the decks because of the noise problem. I think this needs to be redesigned, smaller, broken up into pieces. It'll be much more interesting if it isn't just a giant racetrack of a deck. And your stair is 6 feet wide coming down from up above, which is a monumental stair. I mean, it implies that you're going to have waiters and parties and everything else coming down there. I don't think you need that big a stair. I think you can make it much smaller and more family-like. Those are the primary concerns I have. And color will be important also, a medium to dark color on the deck material, whatever it is, and railings or glass rails. Anyhow, I think I applaud the fact you're trying to do something wonderful for your kids. They won't appreciate a big deck as much as they'll appreciate a small one, well-designed for them. And smaller scale, tucked down farther, perhaps dropping at 5 feet from the lower level before you get to the deck. All of these things would help dramatically. It's just out of scale with your house and the neighborhood. That's it. Alex.
Excuse me. Sorry. I was able to visit both properties and thank you to both the applicant and the neighbor for spending some time with me. I'm not completely on Jim's side on this one. I see some of the concerns that you share. I think they're valid. I think you have these two properties that it's crazy. The setbacks are, you have 3 foot setbacks on properties like this. And, I think 16, the applicant is in a particularly tighter spot with the property lines compared to 18. I think the fortunate thing with any resolution that, comes about with these decks they're quite a distance away from, I would say, the primary areas for 18. And that's where I kind of get a little, where are we on the spectrum? What is protected from, sight lines on 18? I mean, noise, just purely talking about privacy and sight lines of the main deck, what percentage of 18 are you going to see being within 80% of the deck? All decks, if you hang on the rail and you look over, you're going to be looking at your neighbors. So, I mean, that's just, there's a math equation to solve here if we, think that, 90% of, the neighbor shouldn't be visible from, 90% of the deck. I'm making those numbers up, but there's 3 points, 2 of them are fixed, right? And you can actually solve for this. So I think that's the discussion. I'd be interested to hear, from Brian, obviously, and a little more in depth, discussion with you, Jim. The sound, I mean, you sounds a good point. I'm not going to pretend to, I don't have enough data to know the decibel level of a deck, 25 feet up in the air. And I think that should be a discussion of what's tolerable. I'll push back a little bit about the size of the deck, given just the very limited opportunities to have a de facto yard. I think we've had a few projects as of late where, families are trying to create livable outdoor space for their young children on steep hillsides. And I think we should facilitate that within reason. and the right way, but I don't necessarily agree with the premise that, you know, oh, you bought a hillside, you know, property, and therefore you should know what you're getting into and you'll never be able to have outdoor space for your kids. Like, I think that we shouldn't, and I'm not saying we as a board agree with that, but that's just kind of been, you know, discussed it in various ways. So, look, I think there's potential opportunities to drop the deck, you know, a few feet lower maybe, with some steps on the side, and you know, that'll help with both, you know, potential sound, and that'll just reduce, you know, every foot you go lower, you start seeing less and less percent of the neighbor. And I think the question is, where are we on that balance between, you know, how much of that side yard and lower deck, are we saying you really can't see, is kind of where I'm at. I think I'm a little bit more in, I don't think there has to be material change in it. But I don't have enough data to really make that assessment. So I'll acknowledge that, you know, I wouldn't say like, oh, this thing needs to be dropped 6 feet, 7 feet, or go to grade as suggested, because I don't think we have enough data to know like what the true privacy issue is, which should be able to figure out. You know, there's enough data out there that someone should be able to tell us if this continues. So it's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Yeah, I think I'm much more kind of where you are, Alex. I read the letter first and, you know, went out prepared for these being two homes that were very close together, right? Like around sound concerns and privacy concerns and all that. And you get out there and there's, you know, there's definitely, you know, a significant for places in Tiburon where literally, you know, two homes will share the same staircase and there's 4 feet between them. You know, there's a significant amount of space. There's a significant amount of, you know, kind of mature vegetation and growth in between these two homes. You know, the other things, you know, there's definitely 18, while lower, is definitely kind of feels like it's set more forward and on the hill than 16, which feels a little bit, you know, applicants, I would say, is a little bit more pulled back. You know, I guess if I go through just some of the stuff that you two mentioned, like from a size standpoint, it's like, you know, these are big homes. I think big decks are absolutely okay. Like you know, the modern deck has, you know, couches and outdoor eating areas and that type of thing. And to kind of break that up versus having this like almost another outdoor area, I don't think necessarily accomplishes much. Like it doesn't really provide, it's more, I think it takes away more from the applicant than it really gives back to, you know, a neighbor or something. So the size doesn't really concern me. The sound, like I guess when you were making the sound comments, I'm kind of thinking like, who is the people that would be impacted by these footsteps? Is it, you know, somebody inside of a home, you know, that's pretty significantly far away with the redwood trees and these type of things in between? And I don't see that, you know, with less people wearing hard leather shoes and high heels and more people wearing sneakers these days, I just don't see that there's just going to be this, you know, clamoring of sound. And it was, you know, the letter from the neighbor mentioned, you know, the sound concern also. And, you know, it was, and I think it was kind of in the, oh, there are going to be a lot of parties that are thrown here, but also mentioned in the letter was like the hosting of PTO meetings and a whole bunch of other things that occurred, which I think that you build homes, you want to have outdoor areas, whether it's a deck, whether it's a garden, you know, people are going to gather there. And I also, you know, living on a hillside, a home downtown, like there's having flat outdoor area is very important if you've got a family. And I think that claiming that you know, I had a chance to go onto the downstairs to claim that kind of the terraced garden was a functional outdoor flat area, just it didn't feel like that to me. And if anything, it just got steeper as it went down. So yeah, you know, I guess I see the point on like maybe they're like lowering the deck, but I think that the flow of coming in and out, I'm trying to imagine how that, you know, you're going to put steps and it's going to be, I'm trying to imagine how the benefits that you would get from forcing the deck to be lowered, you know, like what are you really picking up? And
Yeah, I
mean,
Well,
Okay.
yeah.
Participate here. What you get by breaking up the deck is you get a less massive looking deck to begin with, and by dropping it down even 5 feet, the top of it lets you get close to the ground.
Jim, can you talk into the mic? I'm sorry, we're not going to get any of this.
Uh,
Thank you.
Having ground that you can reach by a deck, and you could do it. And that there's about 10 feet or so in there that would let you get down to the ground. Means that you can use the whole yard. It doesn't have to all be up here. What you're trying to do with this particular proposal is you're trying to raise the grass 25 feet. And then you're just totally divorcing from the hillside. And the sound is one issue. There's a fire issue that's also there because it's terribly susceptible to fire on the hillside. And I would be concerned about that too. I just think it's overscaled and overbuilt. And I don't know if any kids that need a room, effectively, it's about 3/4 the size of this room. It's the size of that deck. So it's a big deck. And it's pushed out a long way. It doesn't need to go out that far. If you cut the corners off of the deck, it would reduce the visibility from both sides of the both adjacent properties. And so I just think it needs a redesign is what it really needs. And putting a 6-foot stair that can peek right over into the neighbor's yard. I mean, if you notice the alignment of the stair, the top of the stair is actually, this is on.
Yeah, but do you think the privacy screen just kind of?
There's no
soft-
privacy screen. You can see the top of the stair directly from the living room of the almhouse, and the stair doesn't need to be there. The stair could be relocated at any number of places, and it doesn't have to be on either side of the house. The adjacent neighbor doesn't want the stair next to him either. So I just, you know, if you look here, this is sheet A5. You can see that the fence is climbing right up alongside the privacy fence that was built when the other house was built. And it's an unnecessary intrusion to have a big stairwell coming down, so you're looking right into the neighbor's yard. And that's-
But I guess, you know, you said, it sounded like one of your concerns was like a 6-foot wide stairwell. I guess I'm trying to understand like what the difference in how like a 3-foot stairwell, 3-foot wide versus 6-foot wide would lessen the impact. In the end, it's a set of stairs that's, you know, and people are going to move from one elevation to another. So yeah, I guess I'm like, how would going from, let's say, a 6-foot to something more narrow, like how would that lessen the impact?
It lessens the impact by the very perception that you can go down. It means people will go down it more often if it's a 6-foot stair than they will with a 3-foot stair. I'm not saying it has to be a 3-foot stair, but if you want a 6-foot stair, it should be placed in such a way that it doesn't drag everybody to look over into the neighbor's yard.
Yep. But I think he's putting a privacy screen.
That just makes it more massive.
But I think that window you're looking, I think out that window, I mean, at least I have a picture. You're looking through like dense vegetation.
No, I'm looking actually at the stair going down along the privacy fence. And it's, the top of the privacy fence is actually lower than parts of that stair rail.
Oh, but I'm saying when you're in 18's house, looking out the adjacent window, I don't think you see that stairwell. I think maybe you'll see a little bit of it through dense vegetation.
Yeah. It's not just privacy for that window, it's privacy for that whole yard on that side. Anyhow, take a look at sheet A3 and look at the size of the stair that is going down there, and you see it's 16 or 18 feet deep and about the same dimension wide. And it could be placed in the middle of the house rather than in the middle of the deck, the living room, or off the edge of it. And then tucked back under building here. Anyhow, I just don't see I don't see it being a reasonable location for a main access stair.
Yeah, I guess I, we all have our own opinions, I think.
Yeah.
Like it personally it doesn't bother me. It seems to bother Jim.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know where you're on it.
It doesn't seem to bother me, I think. Look, I agree. There's a million ways to design the deck, right? I mean, you could have multiple decks, you could have tiered decks. There's a lot of potentially different options. The applicant came to us with this deck, and the question is like, can we make the findings to approve it? Because is it violating any of the guidelines? And it really comes down to privacy of a side yard.
Privacy and noise.
Side yard.
Noise is in the design guidelines too.
Impacted a side
Right,
yard.
so
though.
is the
That's-
noise concern that it's someone inside of another house is gonna hear it, or somebody outside of the house is gonna hear it?
Either. I mean, the fact that,
First of all, I don't believe that anybody inside of a house the next door that's that far away is gonna hear anybody coming down the stairs. I just.
Okay.
I struggle to see that as a scenario, which then means that like, yes, somebody outside could hear somebody going down the stairs. But I think compared to the sensitivities where we see homes that are truly close together and the sound and the echo, like, you know, we had one come through for Mar East where it's like, you know, the houses were like 4 feet apart from each other or something ridiculous. And they had a stairwell. Like I was very concerned about like the echoing of sound and the things and the materials that, you know, steps would need to be created out of to minimize that. Like in this case, it doesn't, you know, for me, it's far enough away, and I don't feel like would have the impact for the neighbor on their side yard.
well, you see it differently. I look at it as an airport runway being built next door, and it's huge. It's huge for all three parties, both people. The uphill party on the east side will be
And I guess
looking directly
it
down.
is a big deck. It is a big stairwell, but these are also not small homes, and these are not, you know, there are homes in the surrounding area that have large decks.
I mean,
There's not one.
yeah,
up
but that
there.
side yard, the 18 side yard is likely bigger than the deck. And it's on a 10-foot, at least 10-foot concrete retaining wall. So it's like they factor the same thing.
Yeah.
So,
They've essentially built a deck in the ground.
right.
Which is fine, because it is a deck. It's not an airborne deck the way this one is. It's a patio.
Yeah, but I don't think it's
That's the difference.
possible for that to have,
And-
to be constructed at 16.
And, okay, well, we just see it differently.
All right, well, it sounds like there would be a motion that would potentially, I mean, do you pass or?
Yeah, I mean, I can,
So if I may,
Resolution.
since there's no reso,
Yep.
what you're going to ask us to do after you make a decision is to return to the next meeting with the resolution for adoption. And in that resolution, we'll place conditions of approval as well. And one of those conditions, just for the opposite neighbor is, and we do this quite frequently, is that the applicant will need to submit a construction management plan as part of their building permit approval, so we can hold them to some behaviors that are necessary.
Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, before we make a motion, I think there's a question of like, are there conditions with like, how do you feel about the condition of the privacy screen of the stairwell?
Yeah, so I guess that was not part of that
was not part of
the
it,
application,
yeah.
right? So it would be like a additional condition.
Yeah.
And the staff have enough on kind of what the details on that to.
Go ahead.
It was part of the presentation that was shown at the meeting that we have on file. So one option is to have us come back with a condition that there has to be a privacy screening of a similar design as shown as part of that presentation. If you want to add a certain height, that would be helpful. Or they could come back with that at the next meeting.
Well, usually what you've done in the past is that you've seen a photo or something that's similar, or you direct staff that you want to, excuse me, a privacy fence of X material, screening that area. We could certainly bring back that condition so that we could work with the applicant to place a privacy screen.
I mean, for me, I think height is more of a concern than
6 feet.
material. Like I'm okay with like staff, providing appropriate material, but what's that?
Like 6 feet.
6 feet,
Yeah.
yeah. So, all right,
So what did you say again? Ask you to bring a resolution?
So what you're gonna do is make a motion for, there's gotta be a motion on the table, there's gotta be a vote. To make a motion to either approve or not, and to add these conditions, and then to instruct staff to return with the resolution for adoption at the next meeting.
So I make a resolution to, motion, got it. So what's the baby? Motion to approve the project with condition that there's a 6-foot privacy screen on the stairwell, similar to what was shown today, in the presentation, and that there are no, that there are no 2 windows added, on the left elevation, as shown in the existing plans.
And the project. is
And the
categorized.
project's categorically exempt from CEQA.
All right, and do we have a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I
All right.
strongly opposed.
All right, with that, the motion passes and we'll be bringing a resolution back at the next meeting. All right, that is it for 16 Place Milan, and we move to 17 Apollo Road. If the applicant could come forward, again, you'll have 20 minutes to present, and then we'll open it up to the public.
Thank you for thank you for seeing our project. Thank you to the board. So this project, there are 2 issues on our application. One are the, existing side yard fences. This is one. And then one is the backyard fences. And so in our application, we are having you approve the new decorative wood cladding that we added on the side yard fences, and we're requesting a variance for the rear yard fence based on your zoning code requirements. And so new cladding added to the existing side fences. The existing side fences have not been changed in location or height, just new material added to the 17 Apollo facing side of the fence. And at the rear property fence, we are leaving the existing rear fence in place, and we're constructing a new fence on the 17 Apollo side of the property. And that is requiring a variance because we're for a height. And so this is a picture of the side yard fences. Construction has already been done on them, and we did not know that we had to get design review board approval on these fences because they're existing fences, so we didn't, but staff told us that you still have to approve them, so they have been constructed. Again, you can see the top of the existing wood fence here. The height hasn't changed. We just put new cladding on them. And these fences were in good condition and did not require any repair either, so the existing fences remained as is. So the rear yard fence, we're requesting a variance to increase the height of the fence. And this is a variation from what was previously approved in our building project, building permit, and our previous design review board hearing with you. In our previous design set, we had replaced the wood retaining walls with a concrete retaining wall, and we had this wanted to clad the existing wood fence, similar to the treatment we had for the side yard fences with wood cladding. Because the distance from the new wood cladding to the face of the new retaining wall was more than 3 feet, that did not require a variance. And we were just gonna build up to the 6 foot, allowed 6 foot height there. And so that didn't require a variance at the time. During construction, it was found that the existing wood fence was not in good condition. You can see part of it is kind of, you know, rotted away. We also discovered that the neighbor's property had no retaining element at the bottom of their fence. So dirt was kind of spilling over from the higher side of the property onto the 17 Apollo side of the property. And so our contractor installed a new fence structure in front of the existing wood fence, thinking that that was okay. And he also added this retaining wood, pressure treated wood baseboard to act as a retaining wall to support the existing fence. And then it was at this point where the building inspector told us that, you know, actually we need to re-permit this because now the height or the distance from the existing retaining or the concrete retaining wall to the face of the new fence structure is now less than 3 feet. And so by your zoning code, the height of the fence records from the grade below the wall to the top of the fence. And so we are requesting an 11-foot 4-foot fence, 11-foot 4-inch fence, measured from the height of the ground below the retaining wall to the top of the new fence. As you can see, the fence, the existing, our new fence won't be taller than the existing fences. Oh, I'm not sure if this stopped working. There you go. Is there another page to this, or there should be another page? But
I can try it on here too.
I'm
so-
sorry.
That is the.
That is last page, okay. So our new fence is built to the height of the existing fences. This neighbor's property is a little bit taller. This property goes down, but this neighbor also has structures that go up to the same height. And that is the 11-foot 4 fence, 4-inch height we're requesting for this rear fence. And they'll be constructed similar to the side yard fences with the wood cladding. That's it, thank you.
Yeah, just a couple, I guess, couple quick questions. Can you go back to the elevation?
Yes.
So just confirm, so I didn't have a chance to visit the Mercury side, the backyard of the Mercury property which would be the kind of lefts, yeah, actually the cross at the bottom, the fence detail.
Yep, so their property is about a foot higher than our retaining wall here.
Okay,
And you
that's
can
their
see- yeah, you
natural
can see that
grade.
That's their natural grade.
Okay. And then I guess what existed prior to the retaining wall being put in? What was the grade like in the backyard?
It was the same.
Okay, that's the old one.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they had 2 wood retaining walls that were falling down. And so we replaced it with a new concrete retaining wall. And we didn't go the full height because, you know, I think we went to a 30-inch. We wanted a 30-inch wall there.
Okay, and you had also mentioned the 2 side fences required that's not part of this,
That is
right?
part of the
It
same.
was part of,
Yeah, they just needed approval.
but no variance request.
No variance
Okay,
request,
alright.
yes.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
because I'm a little confused. So pictures I took from this morning and some of the pictures. I saw some fence section that I didn't see any concrete retaining wall. Like I saw like maybe a little bit under, but it was right next to the pool house. It was just, you know, but I measured it was like 8.5 foot, wooden kind of planks.
I'm sorry, did you not see it in here? Like it, or in the plan, yeah. So are you talking about here? Or what?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what's your question?
I think it was just, is that the pool house?
There's a, yeah, cabana structure,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's the concrete retaining wall goes across the back of the property here.
Okay.
And it is there.
Okay. But, okay, that's fine.
Okay, I think you can see it in the picture here. And also here, right here,
Flip around.
goes all the way. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Yes, you just went over the existing fence on both the side yard fences? Is
Yes,
that it?
yes.
Okay.
And we had told the neighbors about that too, and
Well, did the neighbors approve of it or did
Mhm.
they object?
they didn't object.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll open it up to the public. There's obviously no one here that would speak, but if we could go to the Zoom call and see if there's anybody on the Zoom that wishes to speak on this project, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen and we'll let you in.
We have no hands raised.
All right, thank you. You do have an additional 5 minutes if you'd like. But since you use it, you don't have to. Thank you. All right. All right. Any final questions for the applicants before we close the public portion of the hearing? Seeing none. All right. So with that, we'll close the public portion. Bring it back to the board. You want to lead us off on this one, Alex?
I don't, I thought I visited the site today, but I'm now wondering if it was 17, if it was 7 Apollo, which may have been also under construction with a very similar 8.5 foot fence.
Okay.
So I'm going to kick it to Jim while I reread the staff report so I can make a comment.
First of all, I'd like to say that the house has come out very well. It's nicely done and it suits the site and the site. It sets a whole new trend for that part of Tiburon. Along the way, a couple of things have happened, particularly with the fences. By recladding the 8-foot fence, effectively you're rebuilding it, which triggers, I think, design review, but the staff has said they've let it go, so I'm going to let it go too. Nevertheless, I think we ought to change our code because I doubt if those 8-foot fences were approved before. And that's part of our issue. I think also we ought to rethink our whole fence height in all of Tiburon because everything we're doing, everything that comes before us is coming before us for an 8-foot fence when 6 feet is the code. And I know that's a state law, but I think we should see what we can do to change it internally in Tiburon. I don't have a problem with these machinations. The level changes in there are continuous from one end of that street to the other. And I do think by creating this high fence all the way around, you've given yourself a great deal of privacy. I wonder what happens on the other side of the fence when it isn't clean and gorgeous the way yours is right now. So I would tend to say if we were gonna go 8-foot fences, it makes a much more cellular approach to the yards, every one of them. And there's some code things there that we ought to look at that make it possible without us having to give a variance for every 8-foot fence. So other than that, I don't have a problem with it. I would vote for this because from a design standpoint, it's actually quite pleasant.
You want to go or you want some more time? What's that? Okay, all right. I would, I went out to the project. It came out beautiful. The one, I think, concern I remember when it came to originally was that kind of the top right corner would be too high and a little bit too kind of mass in that corner. And I'm glad because I remember I was in the minority when everybody else was, and I was kind of like, does anybody else have that concern? No one else did. And so once I got there, I was like, yeah, actually it's not a big deal at all. So I think it came out, the project came out beautifully. It's always nice to go back and see something after it's done, you got.
It's already been replaced. Yes. So, we may have.
We
can't.
close the public portion,
Public-
so
public-
unfortunately,
thank you.
yeah, even though it's a polite conversation, talk to Jim afterwards. So then, regarding the fence, right? You're right. We're going through a lot of fences these days. Like this one it's the elevation change that makes it the difference between previous applications where it's like there's a variance request for something and it's like just flat lots, and you set, I think, a bad precedent if you approve something over. In this case, it's the retaining wall that's for me. I did have just a quick question for staff in a case like this. Like if the neighbor on Mercury were to put up essentially a 6-foot fence, it wouldn't trigger a variance for them, right? Despite the fact that there's a retaining wall on the other side, it's all about the property line and which
That's
side
correct.
of the fence the property is fence is on. So, to me, it's kind of logical. It falls into one of the times that we do variances like this to allow people to have effectively a fence that's right for the property, right? So pretty easy for me to get behind, just so that the neighbors can't necessarily walk up to a shorter fence and look over it into the pool. So.
I can agree with my colleagues. I'll blame the 9-week-old and a lot of construction on Apollo. I'm sure 17 came out nice. 7 Apollo also came out very nice. So yeah, no, but I do agree. Like we see this a lot, like elevation changes and just the technicality and the retaining wall and having to retain material, earth really creates special circumstances. And I think I can make the findings for that as well. I knew you were gonna have me.
That's not what we're speaking about
Yeah,
right now.
as the chair, I should say that application has not been, it's still in progress. We should not be talking about it. So, so in that case, we'd be looking for, I think we do have a resolution on this. So we'd be looking for
do.
approval of the resolution that we have.
To adopt the resolution.
I'm sorry. I'd like to make, okay, here we go. As to 17 Apollo Road, I'd like to move that the project is categorized from CEQA and that we adopt the resolution as prepared by staff. We have a second.
And that you can make all the findings for both the variance
and
and
that I can
the
make the
guiding
findings for the
principles.
variance.
Thank you.
All 4 findings. Do we have a second? Second, and do we all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. And with that, we adopt the resolution and we bring to the end adjournment, which once again be able to knock. Thanks, everyone.